It jumped from 48 to 56. So we got more than 50 in the room. I'll start. A lot of the usual suspects in the room: Daniel Kester, blah, 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 Dan Boyd, Mark Miller, Joe Hayes. News Now, NME, like New Music Express, but I bet it's different. Padre, Dan Boyd, Ram 50 V8. And I did get a note from the Canadian robot lady. She says she probably won't be in today. Is feeling a little under the weather. So, and a couple other things popped up in there. We were talking about the Memorex. Remember the "Is it live or is it Memorex" commercial? And you see him in Rolling Stone magazine, the print ad with that guy sitting in his chair being blown back, which is probably more of an indication of how loud his speakers were, but it was a pretty cool image. So, retired butcher boys checking in from Lincoln, Northern California. I've mentioned this from time to time, but there's an airport, a small airport in Lincoln, and I've flown into it with my brother. My brother is a pilot, and we were flying out in California. We stopped at Lincoln in Northern California to actually look at an airplane. Pretty cool. Long time ago, though. Carl's Corner, afternoon, Steve, or RUAI. Yeah, isn't there like some kind of Turing test you could give me, ask me some kind of questions to see whether or not I can answer them as a human would be? Gordon 861 just got home. Yeah, so now you can sit down and do nothing. MHO8 297K and clear in Denver. I got 58 here. It's sunny. It's actually a nice day outside right now. I ran out and got some gas. Filling some gas cans with gasoline because I've got to do some yard work. And the wintertime I go through a little bit of gasoline in my ATV and my snowblower. In the summertime, I burn through it because I got the riding mower and ATV also. But I spend more time outside doing stuff that requires the gasoline, but not in the car. So Victor Jason, hi, Steve. Hi, Victor. Gordon 861. Wow, great timing. We already said that. Irving Johnson, all right, we made it. Riverside, California for James Chisholm. Tom Riddle, did you ever hear of the satire radio host Phil Hendry? I've heard of the name. I'm not that familiar with him, though. Mark Miller is considering a nap later in honor of the sloth. Mr. Fix at GA is checking from Sonoya, Georgia. Never heard of it. Two left thumbs. The UK Maxwell ad wins. It had Pete Murphy from Bauhaus in the chair. Wow. Bela Lugosi, my friend. Conzilla, any other fun, interesting stories to share on VinWiki? Yes. I've got a list of them, and I'm going to go down there shortly and shoot some more videos with Ed Bolian, a dear friend of mine. I had a scheduled date to go down this month and had to cancel it. And I'll explain all of that. This month, the month of April of this year, turned out to be one of the craziest months in my life. And I have not been whining about it in my videos because no one wants to hear me whining. But I do feel I'll have to explain a few things. So we'll get to that somewhere down the road. Master Porb, I got the book you sent me for the dictionary. Thanks. Yeah. American River Houses, most likely. That's the one I got more of laying around. Andrew Zubke. I know an attorney named Zupke. I wonder if there's any connection at all linguistically. Robert Ross is checking from Liberty, Kentucky. Daniel Kester, I know where the Lincoln Airport is. Not far from that. A plane, Rio Lindo has an airport a bit smaller than Lincoln. Mike Lackner, Rocky Horror Picture Show or Pink Floyd's The Wall. I hate to say this. I haven't seen either one. When The Wall came out, you're talking about the movie, the dramatic movie. It was panned, and I never got around to seeing it. And Rocky Horror was somehow not quite in my social circles. And it wasn't until much later I've heard people talking about it, but I never got around to seeing it. And I've heard that if you watch it without the audience, it's not quite the same. So there you go. James Chisholm, Bela Lugosi lived 2 miles from me in his later years. And of course, there's that Johnny Depp movie, Ed Wood, which talks about the real Bela Lugosi in his later years. So, now a curmudgeon says the Memorex ad featured the classic JBL L100 speaker. The prodigal stranger, we all want to hear you whining, but just do it on the second channel. Well, I'm going to put up a video on the second channel. That's where it will go. But even on the second channel, I get people complaining. And I did a video about a month ago, and I mentioned that somebody had made a comment and I felt the need to respond to it in a video. And this guy goes, "I've written you all these emails and you've never responded to them." And I'm looking at his name. I don't recognize his name. So I go, "Where are you sending them?" No response. So if you complain and I answer you and your complaint is that I don't answer you, I know it sounds like an Alan Parsons Project song, but it's not. Elathea, how you doing, my friend? Wine. I'm taking my watch off because some of you may have noticed I've actually got a Band-Aid right where the watch goes. And I've got something. I think it's a bug bite. Could be poison ivy, but I think it's too early for poison ivy. But just something, a little scratch right there. If I scratch it, it hurts. If I put a Band-Aid over it, it's fine. So there you go. Grubby old Patriot says, a nice sunny day, good day to pull my Harley or my Shelby out. It's a pain making choices. Which Shelby do you have? I had my Cobra out earlier this week. I had my Viper out last week. Today will be a nice day, but probably a little too chilly to have the Cobra, at least if you're going too fast. Blah, blah, blah. Did your hair get smaller or did your head get bigger? No, the pictures got smaller. to quote an old movie starlet. No. Of course, my hair's gotten shorter over the years, but I suspect if I tried to grow it out, I'd look really bad with long hair. I'm not saying I looked good with long hair back in the day either, but I did put up the video, "Welcome to Mud Creek," in my on my second channel, and in the picture I've got the long hair, the long hair I had. Somebody said, "Yeah, dude, you look like a stoner." And no, my hair wasn't that long. I mean, come on, But Foxborough, Massachusetts here. What's your take on the Lions draft? Tim M. To be honest with you, I don't follow the Lions that much, even though I am from Detroit, figuratively speaking. The Detroit Lions, I've pointed out, are basically a hoax that has been perpetrated on the city of Detroit for the last 30 years. Last year, I know they did pretty well, but they imploded during the playoffs. And I like a few of their players. Aiden Hutchinson is a machine. I mean, that guy's a monster. I mean, talk about one guy having an impact. But I didn't even follow who they drafted. I think I glanced at the list and didn't recognize any names. I mean, I was happy when they did, in fact, draft Aiden Hutchinson because I knew who he was. But then he got hurt last year. So, but I don't follow the Lions that much. I've learned not to. Jim Aragon, Steve, your video this morning talked about a stolen car with a recovered, and then a VIN swap. What happens now? Yeah, someone's got to swap the VIN back in correctly, I would assume. And the weird part is that it's considered in America really, really touchy to play with a VIN tag. So you'd have to take it to a dealer or somebody authorized to do it. But I've never encountered that problem before. But yes, obviously they'd have to do that somehow. But again, I don't know how you do that in England, which is where that story took place. I had somebody respond to that email and go, you said that a car was stolen to order. And you think that's news? That's not news. That wasn't the purpose of the story. The purpose of the story was the guy went out to buy a replacement for his stolen car and accidentally bought his stolen car. That's the news. People think that every single element of a story has got to be news. I mean, in that case, when I say, "Hey, I'm Steve Lehto," yeah, I know that. You were here last time. Can't use any words I've ever used before either. Oh, boy. Thomas Hine, how about Judge Middleton with long hair and a ponytail? Yeah, you can do that in small town Michigan. Airplane mechanic, why are you doing your own yard work? Just hire someone to do it. You know something? It's kind of funny as you get older, and I am older, at least older than I was. And when you're doing your own yard work at your own pace, when you feel like it, it's not a chore. So I've got a riding mower. And when I was a kid, I had to push a lawnmower, walk behind it. I hated that. I was making money. I was mowing neighbors' lawns and stuff. But now I'm like, hey, it's a nice day. Slap on a hat, slap on some gloves, go mow some until I get bored and then I'll stop. I'll go back out and mow some more later. But I actually, I had a chainsaw. I had my chainsaw out Monday or Tuesday. Oh my gosh, that's fun. Now, if I was on a work crew working with a chainsaw all day long, yeah, no, that would be a grind. But if I got some woods on my property and a tree fell, and I'm like, oh, next time it's a nice day, I'll break out the steel. And I broke out the steel and went out there. Ring, ring, ring. And like I said, that's fun. Kryptonic HD said, I had a dream I was facing a judge and I looked to my side and I had Steve Lehto with me. And I realized, wait, he doesn't practice in California. Then I woke up. But when you saw me next to you, was it a nightmare or was this a dream where you're like, this is going to work out really well? Dan Boyd still uses the walk behinds. The walk behinds. Robert Dillon says yard work is very good exercise. Plus, you get something done and it gets done right. And that's the thing about it is that I don't mind going. I mean, I'm not doing like chain gang labor or something where I'm going to drop, unconscious or something. I'm out there riding lawnmower, or I'm using. I've got a bunch of steel equipment. I got a brush cutter, a line cutter. I've got a steel hedge trimmer, and so fill it up, fire it up, and go do some work to your board, and then you stop. So Mike Lackner's got an 80-year-old neighbor with a push rotary mower. He rocks. Go Fies. My yard guy's been deported. Doug Jones, I just dethatched and cut my lawn. 6 bags of dead grass. That dethatching, if you're doing that by hand with a thatch rake, that can be a nightmare. But I know there are machines that do it too. So, the prodigal stranger, would California offer you reciprocity, especially since you went to law school there? No, California does not offer reciprocity. I do not believe. There are several states that don't. Florida's another one. New York, I believe, is one. You can get brought in pro hoc vice, and you basically co-pilot a case with a local attorney. But no. But I don't really have a need to do that, except in people's dreams. So Dan Boyd, I don't like the steel string trimmers. The one I use always binds up the line and won't feed more. I'll tell you right now, I had several string trimmers that did not work, where you're supposed to be able to bump it and get it to refeed. And the guy at the steel dealership that I go to, ironically, I just poised. He's actually over that way too. I pointed the right direction for once. He goes, this thing has got this head on it, and he showed me how to work it. It is the easiest thing, and it works perfectly. And he sold me this special line that's infused with a wire. He's like, just don't hit your leg with this, but you'll be fine. Master Porbs thanks the book I received the other day. Yeah, I saw that. Thank you. I saw that. I've already commented. Mark Miller's got a camera doorbell, and I have to remind myself it isn't my lawn when folks walk across it. I live in a townhouse. Yeah, no, same thing. I have a couple of those, and I've got deer that set them off, and I hear that chiming sound, and I look, and there's a deer looking around in front of my house. So, yeah, David P. used to do the old dethatching. A lot of hard work. Tom, when I lived in Detroit, my coworkers would go to a Lions game and party in the parking lot, barbecue and beer. Once the game started, as most people filed inside, they'd pack up and go home. They probably had a better time too. Less traffic, and they weren't disappointed. Oh. Mike Lackner, yard work's much harder since the last kid moved out. I knew I should have kept one. Oh, a couple houses back, I had a neighbor, a gentleman who liked doing yard work, and he had a couple big pieces of equipment. He had a big zero turn with a wide cutting swath. And he also had a tractor with a snowblower attachment. And I let him do it because he could do it so much faster. I felt silly doing it myself at half the speed when I can pay someone else to do it at twice the speed. But now I do it all myself. So Johnny Knoxville says, hate string trimmers. So annoying to pull the line out. Once you get one that works, though, it's like a magic trick. And there's a couple of things I've got that I have to cut with a line trimmer. I cannot cut them with a mower. So in other words, I've got a piece of dirt like this, and it's got grass growing down the side of it. String trimmer, or you let it grow. Take your pick. Sometimes I listen to myself. In the Mud Creek photo, was your fly buttoned? Yes. It was quite a distance from the camera, and the photograph is kind of not clear. But I'm also standing on something. Okay, I had somebody else go, "How tall are you that you can lean on a sign like that?" There's wooden posts in the ground, and one was right next to the sign, and I saw that, and I ran over and I jumped on top of that, and so that's how that worked. So Daniel Kester says, interestingly, deer kill more people per year than sharks do per year. No, I believe that, because there's deer amongst us jumping out at the least opportune time. The sharks, you got to go to where they are and mess with them for a little while. So Dan Boyd, I haven't had any electric equipment yet. I've got some electric stuff, but I've got some Ryobi stuff. So I've got like a power drill and an angle grinder, and a sawzall, and those work okay. But the weed whacker with the electric battery, the batteries it would just eat the batteries up. And then I also had another piece of I think it was a hedge trimmer, and it would just eat the batteries up. And I got to the point. It's like, okay, for the heavy duty yard stuff, it's steel and 2-stroke. And if it's the lighter duty stuff in the garage, I can do the electric stuff. So the electric drill is great. Cordless drill, that's fabulous. So M3 says deer. It's unclear if they're doing it because the stupid humans kill themselves. I've had some close calls with deer, but I know some other people have hit deer and they didn't have much choice. So Power Up Mike says, I own a walk behind a string trimmer, but no lawnmower because here in the desert, we don't grow grass. We just fight weeds. That's pretty funny. Dan Boyd used a Ryobi battery sawzall to cut up some dirty old mattresses last week. Yeah, I've used mine to dice a bunch of stuff up, and that's the beautiful thing about a sawzall, which of course is a trademark name. But sawzalls can be used to dice up all kinds of stuff. I know that my brother, a long, long time ago, um, my brother had a big tank, a fuel oil tank in his basement because he bought a house that was there, hadn't been used in decades, and my brothers bought a stack of sawzall blades and brought in a stack of batteries and just and chopped this thing up into pieces that could be carried upstairs. Johnny Knoxville says Team Milwaukee here. No Ryobi in my collection. Yeah, but are you Steel or Husqvarna or John Sered? Ella, I love gardens but hate gardening. Happy to let someone else do it. Yeah, I've known some people who find gardening very, very peaceful. Where I am, if I had a garden, the deer would just eat it. They wouldn't care. They'd be like, "Oh, thank you for putting this stuff in rows for us. It makes it much easier." Tony Bow, love your videos. Thank you. I appreciate that. Steve G says, so I'm so cordless and gas powered, I forgot how to run an extension cord. Hey, Mexican Specs in the house. He's going to ask. So I got the blue hefty cup today, and I got a thermos filled with water, just water today. So David Peterson says, all the deer I've hit left the scene or were uninsured. Prodigal Stranger says, the lemon law business ever dries up, Steve would make one hell of a landscaper. Michael Johnson, Briggs and Stratton. Now, Briggs and Stratton, of course, are known for their small gasoline engines. But did they ever make the actual equipment that was attached to them, or just Briggs and Stratton motors? Because I know Briggs and Stratton, there's also Tecumseh, Kohler a little later on, that kind of thing. KC6NFV, a friend got a battery-powered lawnmower. His front yard started in the back, and 45 minutes of battery is dead. Might take 4 hours to recharge. Big yard. Yeah, buy extra batteries. I know people who've got electric lawnmowers and extra batteries, and they just simply charge all the batteries and swap the batteries out. And when they're done, just recharge them all. But it takes a little bit of time. But I admire the idea of anything that's electric like that that doesn't have to burn gasoline. But once in a while, I really want to, you know, I don't even want to imagine what an electric chainsaw would do compared to my big steel. I've got two steels. I've got a big one and a small one. So Mike Lackner, two-stroke motor. It's been a long time since I tore one down to fix it. Do people still fix them? I assume they do. I know they don't use two strokes that much in snow blowers anymore, but they're still there in things like chainsaws and hedge trimmers and the trimmers and brush cutters we've been talking about. For those who don't know, a brush cutter looks a lot like a weed trimmer, but it's got a buzz saw blade on the end of it, and it just takes down trees up to about that big around, and it's a lot of fun to walk through a wooded area and just be taking down the stuff in front of you, just falling down. Like, it's very cool. Airplane mechanic, have you ever been drunk when making a YouTube video? It would be hard since I don't drink. I haven't been drunk probably in 10 or 20 years. Maybe more than that. I don't know. I've famously told on this channel during a live stream. I went to England last year and had occasion to be in a pub with some of my English friends who said, "What are you drinking?" And I said, while I'm in a pub, I will do as you guys do, whatever you're having. And so I had 3 beers while I was in England, and that I'm pretty sure is all the alcohol I had last year. I'm pretty sure. So, yeah. Now, I have talked about the idea about bringing in somebody with a breathalyzer and doing a show starting sober and drinking to show you how quickly you can get drunk. And I can't get anyone to come in. You're the breathalyzer. And I've actually spoken to several people who said I'd love to, but I can't. And I don't want to get into it beyond that because I I'm still working on it. John Delano says Briggs and Stratton made a car, like a whole car. Wow. I mean, I know there have been some oddball cars out there. Never heard of that one. Alexander Ganakis and Steve does acid. Yeah, can they check for acid in a roadside sobriety test? Watch the tip of my pen and your eyeballs are doing this, S. Gutag, I'm curious how many years after you became a lawyer before opening your own firm? 3. Exactly. Got sworn in 91, went solo in 94. So SKS Yugo, a long time ago, I saw a dead deer on the side of the road. Someone put rest in peace balloons on it. I've seen photographs of that also, memes on Facebook and so on. Steve says, I learned a pint of beer in England is more than 16 ounces. I just assume that once you enter the doors of a pub, all bets are off. It might be more, might be less. Who knows? Johnny Knoxville, who remembers the flying Ford Pinto? I do. Basically, you take a Pinto, you put some wings on it, you attach a thing in the back, and then I think there's a motor on it. And they've had a couple of those car planes, the same way they've had a couple of those car boats. So Alethea says alcohol is such a rough drug. Stopped bothering with it about 10 years ago. You know what's weird is I've dealt with people who have drinking problems, and I've encountered people who've got drinking problems. I've had clients who've had drinking problems, and I believe there must be something that is genetic of some sort, because I can have one beer and go, you know, or I could have two and go, starting to not care about this. No more. I'm done. I'm done. And I've known other people who, they wake up in the morning, they're like, I need a drink. I need a drink. I've told the story before. At the gas station I worked at, they actually hired a guy with a drinking problem. We found out because he'd work on Sundays and he'd hide a bottle of something in the ice box where we sold the bags of ice. And all day long, he'd be carrying a coffee cup, sipping out of it. By the end of the day, his eyes are bloodshot and he's staggering around and stuff. And one day, a coworker narked him out to the owners, who came by unexpectedly on a Sunday and said, "Hey, you come here. You've been drinking?" Oh, yeah. Go punch out. You're done. So Devin Bound, didn't that Pinto become detached in flight? The question is, what happens if that Pinto got rear-ended by another airplane? Oh. Witness multi-chick. Hey, Steve, stopping to like. We'll catch on replay. Have a great Sunday. Well, I think appreciate that. I believe we met last week. So Theodore Becker, Steve seems to be like the kind of guy who enjoys kite flying. Now, I've not flown a kite since I was in elementary school, which would be a while back. But there was like a little fad that went around my neighborhood for like one spring where we all bought kites. And then we're flying, we get bored, and the next thing we're kite fighting. And that was pretty much the end of it. Oh. Kryptonics, I think everyone has issues, but learns their limits or don't drink because they see it's not for them. But people just lets go of their restrictions after a drink, then it leads to addiction. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I do know this in Finland, when my great grandparents lived there were temperance Finns who wanted to do away with all drinking, and they didn't drink. And they, in the same way, there's people in America wanted to ban drinking for a while too, the Volstead Act, and then there were groups of Finns who didn't want to do that. In fact, wanted to drink a lot of alcohol, a lot of alcohol. And so my family, my ancestors were all temperance Finns. And I don't know if that, because that would make sense if none of them drank. That means mathematically I'm less likely to drink. DePaul, 1970 terminology to narc out somebody. I've mentioned it a couple times in videos. That said somebody got narked out. And I've actually had somebody claim like it's a Norwegian word that means, and I'm like, no, it's short for narcotics officer, a narcotics officer. Because the whole point was, some guy shows up you've never seen before. He's like, hey, dude, you got any pot on you? I don't know. Are you a narc? So, Skylar Perone, have you ever been before Judge Middleton or Judge Simpson? No. Middleton, of course, is the one that's over here, District Court, famously all over YouTube. Simpson, of course, 36th District Court. They're both very good judges. I like them both a lot, but I've not been in front of either one of them. It's been a little while since in 36th District Court, and for me to get as far over as Middleton, very unlikely. Most of my cases get filed in the Tri-County area, Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb. George saw a lot of kite surfing in Michigan. Yeah, I suppose up and along like the shore of Lake Michigan, that kind of thing. Johnny Knoxville, we had 2 Ford Pintos when I was growing up. Don't tell anyone. A friend of mine had one. I actually drove it one time. You just don't park them near each other because they might spontaneously combust. Actually, you have to understand there's a big argument now among people who've gone back and deconstructed and reconstructed and gone through the whole Pinto thing. And they've said that, well, it's something, there's nothing that crazy about the design of the Pinto, but a lot of bad publicity and blah, blah, blah. And there's an argument to be made there, but what really hurt them was the memo. And there was a memo that was written by somebody at Ford Motor Company. And somebody done the calculations on what it would cost us if this happened versus what it would cost us if that happened. And I'm not going to get into it because I've actually read books on it. I've had people go, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. So I often do simplify things to explain them here. And I actually understand things very, very well. I had somebody the other day actually go, if you think you know so much about the law, you should go to law school. And I don't mention in every video that I am, in fact, a lawyer. Some people don't know that apparently. It's possible the guy was trying to insult me, but telling somebody who's been a lawyer for 34 years and who taught law school for 10 that they should go to law school, if that's an attempt at an insult, it's a little misplaced. So Aaron Freeman, I'm sure there was a memo. A smoking gun memo, as we like to say. KC6N Effie, my dad built airplanes and he made a box kite. The box kites I never understood. I mean, I understand that they fly, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I understand it. It's up there. What's it doing up there? Maybe that's the attraction. I don't know. George, a guy with a show called Lehto's Law and not a lawyer. Oh boy. MD Hofstein, maybe they want you to go back to teach. No, the guy was saying I need to learn more about the law because I don't know anything about the law. So Janie Segrest, a good Sunday morning, Lehtoites. And again, I would have accepted Lehto Gander. DePaul 31 says, end of every video says Steve is a lawyer in Michigan. No one makes it that far. I still get people saying, what's your address and what size t-shirt do you wear? The two most common questions I get asked by, repeat questions. And it's in every single video on my main channel. It says, here's his address. He wears a double XL. And I've had people say, well, I wasn't sure if that was still good. And I'm like, I put one up this morning that said that. I would think it's still good. Oh, Dan Boyd's box kites are analogous to biplanes. Kind of, except they've kind of got. Wait, does a box kite have an up and a down, or are they symmetrical on the axis? I don't know. Now I'm confused. Johnny Knoxville's parents graduated from the Ford Pintos to a Volare wagon. Yeah, Volare would be Volare, but a Volare wagon. Station wagons, which, by the way, there aren't that many on the road anymore because nobody saved them, so they all went to junkyards. Every now and then you see an old station wagon with the wood paneling go by, and you're like, oh, remember those? But a Volare wagon, the Volare itself was not a great car. So, Daniel Kester, there are kits you can buy to build a plane in your garage. I actually talked to somebody who built their own airplane. You're talking about how fun it was to rivet some of the stuff inside the fuselage, and they had to get somebody small who could get in there and work with them on that. Democratia Autumn 42 says, my sister has a Woody. In a different context, that might have a totally different meaning. Angels Don't Fall says, my friend got hit by a guy that was driving a Hertz rental car. That was the guy who rented its friend who wasn't on the rental insurance and can't get anywhere with trying to sue either of them. What state are you in? Because in Michigan, you can always sue the owner of the car. And in many cases, you can always sue the owner of the car. So Hertz might not have gotten insurance on the person who's driving the car, but Hertz would have insurance. But again, it depends on the state you're in. So Alexander Gunaka, Latoticians. Okay. Oh. Daniel Kester, a very easy and a long easy are examples of home-built planes. I've never heard of a very easy. I've heard of a long easy. Of course, that's, I believe, what John Denver was flying in his last flight. Ian, the Ghost Rider, Jeeping Trucker. Hello, Stephen. All from sunny Daytona Beach, Florida. Tom says your videos haven't shown the t-shirt size in a long time, like a year. I would go check that right now, but okay. Geraldine Lima says, I thought it's strange, but my Mazda CX-5 is classified as a station wagon. Oh, you know something? I may have removed the XXL thing from the credits because I had people going, oh, so now you're begging for t-shirts. I just remembered that. I think I may have removed it. Oh, boy. Irish Scott Ladd, let's see your t-shirt collection. I like to do these multimedia events from time to time. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to go like this, and there we go, like that. And then we'll go like this, and we'll go like this, we'll go like this, we'll go like this, we'll go like that. And there's my t-shirt collection, right there. So I think that's about 110 or 120, something like that. But I'm constantly taking shirts out and putting shirts back in. In fact, I put six shirts back in today. So we like to mix them up, as they say. Mexican spec, is it a collection since you use them? Of course. No, you can collect things that you use. Car collection, that kind of thing. Yeah, Duncan Campbell says, I just checked today's video. It has your P.O. box with no shirt size. I removed that because I was getting sick of people going, oh no, I can't believe this guy's begging for shirts. He's begging for shirts. Oh, you have to understand that's not even a tenth of how many shirts I've got. I've got so many shirts, it's insane. So that's why I'm not begging for shirts. But some people say, I'd like to send you a shirt. So Daniel Kester says the Long Easy and the Very Easy are developed by Burt Rutan. I just never heard of the Very Easy. I remember that I've heard of the Long Easy. I thought it looked kind of cool, and I've seen a few in flight. So Minecraft E13 says, I've seen a few fiction books on your shelf, Other Side of the Night. Well, Other Side of the Night is nonfiction. What kinds of fiction do you like to read? I don't read a lot of fiction. Primarily, it's nonfiction. I like history books. Dan Boyd points out Jay Leno drives all of his cars, and yes, he does, or as often as he can, considering how many he's got. Jason Brindamar says Steve stole a cart for his shirts from J.C. Penney. I do actually have two garment racks. One's got wheels and one does not, and it's because they bought the one without wheels first and realized how hard it was to move. So then I bought one with wheels, and now I wish I had two that had wheels, but I'll work around it. Theodore Becker would like to know if you have a record collection. I used to. I don't have a record player anymore. I've got hundreds of CDs though, and of course now those are getting kind of hard to work with. So Tom says, I knew it was missing because I was looking for the size to buy a Hertz t-shirt. I do not have a Hertz t-shirt. So I wear an XXL. People go, really? Yeah, I'm tall. Ember Miss 69. It's funny, Steve. It's either you're begging for shirts, talking about your weight, and I know I'm forgetting a few things. Oh no, it's you know, it was the most often asked question. Where do I mail it? What size do you wear? And so I put in, and people are like, oh, you're begging for shirts. So I'm like, whatever. Elathea says a Hertz shirt is a genius design or a genius idea. I'm sorry. Yeah, and like I said, I'm not, but MT Hop Steve says the Briggs and Stratton Flyer is listed as the cheapest car ever, being only $125 in 1922 with a 2 horsepower engine. I will have to look that up. I've never heard of it, but the number of cars out there called a Flyer. There was one in Alpena called the Alpena Flyer, and they think there's only one in existence, and it's on display in Alpena. I pity the fools. My teen bought a 20-year-old car. It has a CD player. They've now bought more CDs in the past year than I did during the 90s. My Ford Explorer, the old one, I have an O2, and my Viper both have CD players in them from back in the day. But I still to this day don't know for a fact if the CD player in the Viper works. I've never checked it. And every single year somebody goes, couldn't you check it? I'm like, I have to remember to bring a CD out there. So Andrew Zubke, how tall are you? I'm 6'2". 6'2". Janie Seagrass, bring back the 8-track. The only thing about the 8-track is when occasionally they break a song in the middle. Like they couldn't figure out how to get them all on the tracks so that you're listening to a song and all of a sudden and it starts going again. Dan Boyd has got a CD player in his 05 Mustang GT. Padre had over 350 cassettes and 400 CDs. I've got boxes and boxes and boxes filled with cassettes, but they're all skim tapes. When I was on the radio, I would tape my show and listen to it later and I just never never recycled. Blah blah blah. One of my cars still has a cassette player. So does my Explorer. My Explorer's got a cassette player and a CD player. So caution, high waves ahead. I'd be too busy listening to the Viper's exhaust than to listen to the music. No, that's exactly right. And if I'm with somebody, I almost never listen to music when I'm driving with somebody because I like to talk. But if I'm on a long road trip by myself, yeah. But nowadays I've got the adapters where I can do the Bluetooth off my phone through the stereo in my car. Even my Jeep Wrangler's got that. The guy I bought it from JP, the stereo in it. He goes, by the way, the stereo's got a Bluetooth connection. I'm like, what? Oh boy. George says I can't fit well, and the new Viper is too snug for comfort. I'm pretty sure they're pretty much all snug. To watch me get in and out of a Viper or the Cobra for that matter, it's an exercise. It's a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to get in and out of the Cobra, but with the Viper, I got to duck down and get in. So you basically have to enter backwards and make sure the door is open because if I pull into a space and there's a car parked right here, I can't get out. I mean, because I can't get out and work my way out around the door and also not hit the door into the car next to me. So Andrew Zupke says, nice to meet a member of the not so short group of people. My mother passed away 4 years ago now. And at the funeral, got a picture of me and all my brothers and my father. And I didn't realize when I looked at it, and several people who saw it go, oh, look how tall you are. I'm the tallest person in the group. But there's also an optical illusion because we're standing on a little bit of a hill. But blah, blah, blah. Do you ever get used to the backwards seat belts? And that is something that is kind of weird because the seat belts are in the middle and they go this way. And everybody gets in, it goes like this. And I go over here. Oh, and I even get confused. And just to confuse things, the Cobra's turn signal is on the right-hand side of the shift column or the steering column. And so I have to remember, oh, okay, hang on a second. The Viper, seatbelt, Cobra, turn signal. Oh boy. Padres says short people got no reason. That guy got so much grief about that song. Randy Newman, short people, and of course did "I Love L.A.," which is like the national anthem, but for the city. So I guess it's like the city anthem for L.A. Mike Lackner, my friend, offered to let me drive his TR3. Would have needed the jaws of life to get in. I knew a guy who was in an MG midget, like one of the little cars, and it was a convertible, and he got T-boned, and the car flipped over, and he walked away from it after they lifted the car off of him. Makes you think. It makes you think. Elathea, I like being a shorty. How tall are you? Daniel Kester had a Dodge pickup with a 3 on the tree. I've never driven one. I've been in vehicles with them, but never have. Bob Blah Blah says it's really not as much fun being tall as people say. You're always in the back of the class. You're always in the end of the line, and you stick out in a crowd. You can't get away with anything. That is a common thing, but it is kind of funny because it's kind of nice when people to walk up and like do that to you. just can't you just can't rub it in. Michael Lawless, do you worry about a triple digit speeding ticket? If I got one, I would, yeah. Trick is to not get one. Elathea, I'm 5 feet. 5 foot even? Like 5 foot, like on the nose? Okay. C5, I3, B2, Z9, which is like a password that is considered decent. Do you have an opinion on the VW GTI or Golf R? No. I've never driven either one. So. Blah, blah, blah. Do you play basketball? I haven't played basketball since high school, and I wasn't good back then. I played soccer in high school. Airplane mechanics is you're a lawyer, you're immune to speeding tickets. That's not quite the case. I've gotten a few tickets in my day. Um, and it's never come up when I'm talking to a police officer that I am in fact an attorney. I've gotten off a couple times where a cop just said, "Well, just slow down because I checked your record and you're good." Um, but no, I've gotten a couple tickets. So Aletheus is 5'1" on a good day. There you go. Hadassah Sobel says D104 Mikes. I'm a ham attorney too. I enjoy your work. Well, I'm not a ham, but I am an attorney. But I like the microphones, which I collect, which are over there. It's so hard to do because the screen here is not backwards. But I collect them because I used to work in radio. Jason Brindamar says I heard a guy in the scanner get pulled over in a Viper last week. I wonder if it was Steve. No, not me. I've never been pulled over in either of the cars that would likely draw attention like that. Mike Lackner, could a serious overspeed ticket catch the eye of the Bar Association? It could if it was a misdemeanor or a felony. But simply like 10 over, no. But you should know that the bar associations do require you to report if you are charged with a crime. And so technically a speeding ticket's a civil infraction unless it gets up to the point where it becomes like careless or reckless driving. Careless driving is not, but reckless is considered a crime. So Rudy says hi. Oh, Cole Trickle, can an off-duty officer pull you over if you're speeding? I wouldn't think so, but I don't know. I mean, maybe they're deputized to enforce the law around the clock. I don't know. Jay Klein says my license says I'm 5'9", but I'm actually 5'8.5". Dan DeClerc, there are felony traffic tickets. Well, traffic, yes. Speeding, no. So, like for instance, if you were involved in a vehicular homicide, that would be it's not a traffic ticket, but it'd be a traffic infraction of some sort. Yoda Best says, I always feel bad seeing a 6'6" person fold themselves into a coach airplane seat. That's one of the reasons I hate flying is if I'm flying in the back, I can fit in the seat this way. I don't fit in the seat this way, and it's my knees. And so I try to get aisles as often as I can so I can turn sideways and just get a little bit extra there. But I spend a lot of time just sitting straight in the seat because I can't get my knees out. Janie Segrist, I'm 5 foot as well. Aaron, am I allowed to hit on the girls in your chat? As long as you do it discreetly and try to be classy about it, okay? Sometimes I listen to myself. Do campus cops have any real authority? It depends on which campus and what badge they're wearing. I can tell you that Wayne State University in downtown Detroit has Detroit City police officers who are on campus as campus police. And you better believe they do because I've defended some things that they have gotten my clients for. Brianna CC, do you prefer your women with or without lip color? You mean lipstick? You know what I've always said about makeup, and it's not like I've been talking about makeup a lot, but what I've always said about makeup is the best makeup in the world is where you look at someone who's wearing it and you go, wow, they look good. And you don't say, oh, look at all the makeup they're wearing. And so I remember some kids, and I'm going way back here. I remember kids in junior high school and high school who wore so much makeup that they didn't understand that concept. And they'd have like, the blush in a perfect circle, like a clown right here. Or remember blue eyeshadow? Blue? So that's the trick. So there you go. Hey, Steve B is checking in from Tasmania. Very cool. Very cool. We always forget that Tasmania is a real place. In America, we only know the Tasmanian devil from the cartoons. And of course, that's a documentary. So there you go. Jay Klein says, Steve, just pay for business class. Oh, I'm way ahead of you. How do you think I went to England? I sat up front. I learned that a couple years ago, but I'm always imagining one of these days I might get stuck in an emergency flying, and they're all we got is these tickets, and the seats are way back here. It's like, oh god. So Rudy, wondering if you'd make another video sometimes to cover the UCC a bit more broadly. I think you've asked me that before, or somebody has, because the problem is that the UCC is the Uniform Commercial Code, and the UCC is about that thick. And to say to cover it more broadly, what do you want me to cover? Article 2, which is sales, Article 2A, which is leases, Article 9, which is secured transactions, Article 4, which is banking transactions. I mean, I could spend literally an hour talking about just the section on implied warranty of merchantability. And that's just one subsection in Article 2. So I would need more of a specific question to ask and to go there. Dougie Deuce says, hey, Steve, how about a Cobra cruising video and all the trees and flowers are blooming up there? Springtime is here. Actually it is. Springtime is here. And I will do that. I had some trouble last year figuring out where to put the cameras on my Cobra because I don't like to clamp them someplace where the clamps might do some damage. I was going to talk to my brother about building me some kind of clamp that would allow me to clamp one to the roll bar, and that'd be right here, kind of. And then, of course, I can always clamp one to the windshield, but I always like to have one inside the car pointing at me so I can talk. But then again, it's the Cobra. You might not be able to hear me talk. So we'll see. MHOA says Tammy Faye was gorgeous. Well, some people can get away with it. M. Colbert, economy is cattle class. That's what I often call it. David Phillips says Tammy Faye put her makeup on with a cement trowel. Oh. George says, has there been an increase in lemon law filings since 2020 with the issues I've heard about manufacturing issues due to availability of labor and parts? I've been having a lot of calls in the last year or two, more now than just 2 years ago, regarding people saying I brought the vehicle in and they say they can fix it when the parts come in, but the parts aren't coming in. And they can't blame COVID anymore. So I've had a bunch of cases like that recently. So James Thompson's bone mics work better in the wind. You mean even like the mics they use on board, like bombers and stuff? Like the one that, like down here? Oh, God, Rudy. UCC covering secured transactions and then bills of lading for trucking, customer unpaid invoices, motor carrier collections. That's actually stuff I know very little about. I mean, I know where to find it in there, but I probably couldn't do it justice. But I always like to tell the story. I had a friend who owns a company, and they had a big display in Chicago trucked back to Michigan. And when they got back to Michigan, they offloaded it from the truck, and they go, here's your bill. And my client looked at it, and it was double the thing he had signed at the front end. He was at both ends of this transaction. He goes, but your contract says you're going to pay this for it. And the guy goes, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to pay this. And he's like, no, I'm not paying that. So they take his stuff and put it back on the truck, and they go, well, we're not gonna let you have your stuff until you pay us. My friend calls me, he goes, what should I do? I go, call the police. And he goes, why? I go, when that stuff was offloaded, they no longer had a right to it. So when they grabbed it and put it back on the truck, now it's actually theft. Guess what happens when the cops showed up? They offloaded it really quick, took my client's money, and left. So you might have a security transaction before you offload it, but once you've offloaded it, it gets a little trickier. So, and by the way, my client had faxed me, yes, using a fax machine, a copy of the contract and all that. So there you go. Zen AX says, I bet lawyers who focus on housing issues must be busy with all the cheaply made row houses being built in the U.S. But the question is, who would be hiring them? The tenants or the buyers or owners of the property? I'd be curious about that. Doing cool stuff says we listen to your videos when we go to bed. Don't mean to offend, but thank you for putting me to sleep. No, I've had people tell me, they go, Steve, you've got something about your voice. It's kind of like a monotone, but there's something relaxing about it. I would take that over saying, "Hey, Steve, your voice keeps me up at night." Oh, airplane mechanic, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Do I have to be one or the other? Doing cool stuff since we've watched you for years and you're still together. Oh. I pity the fools of Steve's third channel, bedtime stories. I should I should take the audio off a bunch of my videos and then put them to some white noise visually, so there's nothing to watch, and then purposely take sentences that are out of order and stuff and mix them all up. And once you realize it makes no sense, maybe they put you to sleep. Devin bounces that overnight radio voice. Yeah, I never did that kind of radio though. The overnight shows I did were always a little bit faster and louder than overnight, the middle of the road type stuff, yacht rock, which I understand is an insult, but there you go. Dana 2021 says you're the only lawyer I like, but how many do you know, really? So I know a bunch of nice lawyers. I know a bunch of nice lawyers. I know a bunch that are jackasses. I actually know some lawyers that when I find out they're married, I'm like, who would marry you? Like I'm tempted to ask them, like, someone married you? Were you like this when you married them? Really? Are you like this at home? Oh boy. Theodore Becker says it's the bass. Yes, and it's the bass through the Electro Voice RE20 for the people who understand what that is, because this microphone is actually renowned for its handling of the bass section of the spectrum. So there you go. Brianna CC says most attorneys are married, right? I don't know if they're married more or less than any other profession. So George says, I heard don't hire a lawyer who advertises on billboards and bus stops. That's not a bad argument. I've known some lawyers who did, but in Detroit, I can tell you that the billboard advertising is out of control. But I made a decision a long time ago that the only advertising I'd ever do that I'd pay for was when phone books were a thing. And I do have a website, but I do not advertise anywhere other than that. And my whole point is that my work should be my advertising. My clients are my advertising. So that's all I care about. Lock picking lawyer, hands down. Love his vids. Oh, that guy is great. I love the lock picking lawyer. I've corresponded with him before. And I think he is a genius to have figured out something he can do where he can say he's a lawyer and it's fascinating to watch, but you don't see his face. And so he gets around having to deal with a lot of this other stuff. And all it is it's a one camera shot for the most part. It's genius. It's genius. So Theodore Becker says, I think you would sound good with a ribbon mic. I've got one ribbon mic right there, but I don't, it's got some weird connector on it I don't recognize. So I don't know how to plug it in or how to use it. But I just use these mics because I've got two of these. I got one right here and I got one back over here. Because I use these in radio and I'm so familiar with how they sound. I like it. So Theodore Becker, the proximity effect. Well, believe it or not, I've got it flipped the other position. So if I flip the switch the other way, the proximity effect would become more pronounced. But if I move my head around like this, it would drive people crazy because it'd be doing this. And so there you go. When I was being a disc jockey, though, and I was literally up against it, I'd flip the switch the other way. Very high times. I followed you for so long. Always good to see you doing well. Thank you. I appreciate that. Been doing this now for 10 years. Alethea says, I like that story you mentioned of a man who wrote to you saying he lost faith in you because you posted about some work boots. Are we talking about the Rock Rooster boots I plugged a couple times? Oh, Dana 2021 says the lock picking is fascinating, but I haven't tried it yet. Yeah, that's the greatest thing ever. Is you don't have to be a locksmith to enjoy his channel. I find it fascinating to see how these locks work, and then also to see how easy it is for an expert to get through them. That blows my mind. SD back out says this year after jury duty, I was surprised to see the district attorney and defense attorney all buddy buddy after proceedings. They looked like they hated each other in the courtroom. I've told this story before, and I apologize if you heard it before, but a very good friend of mine, a guy I talked to yesterday, very good friend of mine, back in 1994 or 95, I had a jury trial in Royal Oak, Michigan, and he was the defense attorney. And he and I had already been working together for years because he represented somebody I sued a lot. I got to know the guy really well, and we got along great. And so during one of the breaks at trial, I asked my client, "You want to go have lunch?" And she goes, "No, I have to do something else during lunch, so you're on your own." So I then turned to my friend. I go, "Hey, what are you doing for lunch?" She goes, "Let's go have lunch." So we walked across the street to a restaurant, had lunch, and came back and thought nothing of it. The trial went for a couple more days, and then at the end, we got a verdict, and we're talking to the jurors afterwards. A couple of them decided to stick around. And who put that there? We decided to stick around and talk to us. A couple of jurors did. And one of the jurors goes, "Excuse me, did I see you two guys eating lunch the other day?" We actually ate lunch more than once together. And we're like, "Yeah, why?" And they're like, "Is that common?" And the funny thing is that attorneys can get along. And in fact, we can get along during the trial. We just didn't talk about the trial. We had lunch and talked about other stuff. But that can happen. So it's like, hey Sam, hey Ralph, the sheepdog and the sheep, or the sheepdog and the wolf, sorry, and the sheep. And blah blah blah. And I occasionally talk about that. And that's the whole point, is that we're professionals. We do what we do. And like I said, I'm still friends with the guy. I still talk to him. Andrew Zupke, are there any topics you wouldn't do? Well, I avoid politics. So, Jason Brindamauer, I started picking locks after watching LPL. I have a stack I've yet to get through. It's honestly kind of relaxing. You have a master lock number 5? I knew some friends who were into lock picking, and the master lock number 5 is one of the most common locks out there. And it's fairly easy to get through if you know what you're doing. Kevly 33, hi Steve, New York here. Where did April go? It blew past us pretty quickly. And like I said, I had a crazy month, which I'll explain on Friday. Crazy month. And a lot of it was unexpected, which was what made it really, really crazy. So, what's your opinion of the civil rights lawyer from West Virginia? You mean the guy on YouTube called himself a civil rights lawyer? I've seen a few of his videos. He's a great guy, Steve. And Steve's the one who asked the question. I've actually corresponded with him a couple times. I don't know him personally, though, but he seems like a really good guy. War Eagle, I really enjoy your videos. Would you like to teach at law school again? If there was one handy, I would. But I'd like to teach a class such as consumer protection or maybe trial practice. Those are two of the 3 classes I taught previously. It has to be a class I'd enjoy, but it's time consuming, but I enjoyed it enough to do it. But right now, there aren't really any law schools handy for me to do that. So, Harry Seldon, what if a politician had a crazy encounter with Hertz? I would cover it one of 2 ways. If a politician got different treatment because of who they were, I might cover that. Or if a politician got really screwed over by Hertz, I'd cover that just to show, like, hey, look, it happens to everybody, So, Mexican Spec, April 30th is Kids Day in Mexico. We'll stay in the house. They have a Kids Day, like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Kids Day, April 30th. Okay, well that's a Thursday. Dave Beddoes points out that Ralph Wolf looked awfully a lot like Wile E. Coyote. I noticed that too. In fact, I think the voice, because Wile E. Coyote did speak once or twice in the old days. So, well, Bill says the guy asked him if he could make him some lock picks. He said, "Yeah, here you go," and handed him a ball peen hammer. Oh. Blah, blah, blah. During the hundreds of hours of YouTube watching, do you ever comment below? I do occasionally, but I invite you to do so anytime. Airplane Mechanic, is the Institute for Justice real? Yes. Yes, it is. They do exceptionally good work. And the way that you would know that is go to their website, ij.org, and look at all the cases they bring and all the cases they've gotten to the U.S. Supreme Court and the people who they represent who can't afford to have attorneys at all. They'll represent people. And instead of not having an attorney, you suddenly have some of the best attorneys in the country handling your case. They're very real. What about teaching class in American history? Says Daniel Kester. I taught Michigan history at the college level for 2 years. I've taught Michigan history. So I would consider that also. That's a little different, though, speaking to undergraduate students. Undergraduate students aren't as serious as law school students, which I had to really tell myself when I'm teaching to understand that. Zenax says, whenever Steve says blah, 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 it sounds like blah, blah, blah. I believe that is, in fact, the point. Theodore Becker, maybe online law classes. I don't think I could do online law classes because I like the interaction. The idea of lecturing, just literally just standing in front of the class and lecturing and expecting people to take notes and learn it, is not the same as me standing in front of the class. And if you've read what you're supposed to have read, then what you do is I can ask questions to see if you understand it. And then you can ask questions to clarify. And that is so much better than simply having someone do this and somebody listening. And so that's why I get invited quite often to like shoot a video and let us use it for our continuing legal education courses like CLE. And I'm like, really? Someone's gonna watch a video of me talking and it's gonna be so compelling they'll learn from it? Oh, Dan DeClerc says the Socratic method of teaching requires interaction. Yeah, and I wasn't as insanely Socratic in my classes as some professors would be, but I still did. You know, I'd call on people. And by the way, the trick to doing the Socratic method right is you don't let people off. So if you call on something they didn't do the reading, you go, "Oh, that's too bad. Let's pretend you did. If I did this and you did this, what would happen?" You know, and when they realize they got to answer one way or the other, they start doing the work. So Dana 2021 says we do that every time you release a video, but that's different though. I'm talking about continuing legal education, CLE, where they say if you want to keep your bar license current in this state, you must watch so many hours of videos. So you're doing it as a requirement. So you're just sitting there like this, and you're probably doing something else, but you're playing in the background. Whereas I understand to get people to watch my videos, they've got to be interesting. And if I do a bad video, they might not come back. So Prince Albert claims he's learned something from watching my videos. Oh, Aaron Freeman, has a writ of habeas corpus ever been issued on arrested money? That's an interesting question. But again, don't forget that habeas corpus literally means present the corpse or present the body, and is a reference to a human being. So they would say it wouldn't apply. But it's an interesting argument, you know, because if you can arrest it, you can accuse it of a crime. But they're saying, well, that's all just a legal fiction. Sub GR77 says, by the way, just got here and you woke me up. How dare you? I was perfectly happy napping. Rudy says, last comment on this. I provided Stellantis before a dozen trailers. I had a GPS on them. We had contracts to do work. They used our equipment for extra unauthorized work, which they ain't pay. So does your contract say you can charge them for that, or are they misusing your stuff? Elliot Polach says, my partner starts Purdue Global Law School 100% online in Indiana, where we live, one of only 2 states that allows it for now. I start next semester. I'll be interested to see how that works out, but I'm assuming that the Global Law School, if it's online, is going to be a professor at the other end of that thing who can call on you and make you so that's not as bad, but I just to me it removes too much. I'd like to be able to be talking to one person and look over here and see the person who just fell asleep. Vinny Northwest, can you watch Perry Mason to get your hours in? Obviously. LA Law also. Leo the Nomad says, hey, Steve, regarding the Navy lieutenant's towing case, where was the car, street or driveway? It sounded like it was the driveway. And that's the interesting point because it was in the driveway, it was in private property, but they said the tag had expired. And so some people pointed out and said, well, yeah, but if the cops had it towed, why don't they get in trouble? Well, cops tow cars all the time. The car's illegally parked, they tow it. They towed it wrongly, you get your car back. This guy's out at sea, his car goes to tow yard, who then says, well, the bill never got paid. And there's a process to go through to get the rights to auction the car off. And somewhere along the line, they skipped the part that said, you must check to see if they're in the military. MindBez says you might be doing something right if you got 579,000 subscribers. Which is what I'm always tempted to say when somebody goes, dude, you should go to law school because you don't understand the law. And all you're doing in your videos, you're going in circles, repeating the same thing over and over and over again. You don't know what you're talking about. Sig226, what, no Matlock? You know, I've never actually watched Matlock, so I don't know whether I would allow Matlock for CLE. Juranovium says, hey, Steve, I just bought a brand new RV. Did you really? I actually talked to somebody else today who did too. So Mexican Specs says, Steve, was the car parked on the street? Well, I think I said I wasn't sure if it was on the street or privately parked. I don't know. Oh, boy. Prince Albert's, how do you check if someone's in the military? You might not be able to, in which case you check the boxes. I don't know. There's 3 check boxes. Yes, they are. No, they aren't. Or I don't know. And you're supposed to check the I don't know box. And you check the I don't know box, then somebody else checks. And presumably the court has a way of checking. That's what I always assumed. But, you check the correct box, you're good. Rudy says they misused the trailers. It was my drivers that were supposed to move the loads on our trailers, but they used different drivers instead and showed a lot of unauthorized use. So did they think they had the right to use them, or did they think those were their trailers, or what? And the question then is how much of a commotion do you want to cause with the customer? Because they might say, oh, well, we'll pay you for that, but then we'll disconnect, we'll discontinue whatever it is we're doing with you otherwise. KC6NFE, what microphone are you talking into? This is an Electro Voice RE20. Electro Voice or EV RE20. Bob blah blah Winnebago. The quality comes out before the name goes on. Jason Brindamauer, Tigers 2-0 or 2-0 in the second inning, up 2-0. 2-0. Chuck Whitehead, I wonder if there are locations in America where the person is sheriff and judge, like the Andy Griffith Show. I believe there are. I believe in some small towns, a justice of the peace can hold a couple different positions in town. I don't know how common it is, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if, like, the mayor was also the justice of the peace, that kind of thing. Elliot says, Professor Polach calls on Mr. Lehto, who appears to be napping Mr. Lehto, Summarize 42 USC 1983 for the class, since you were clearly studying it from inside your eyelids. And I'd say, well, of course, 1983. That's where you get a 1983 action from. And all you got to do is watch YouTube to learn all about those. People yell that at the cops all the time. Theodore Becker says Columbo. Columbo's more of a crime solving, a police procedural show, they say. Caution, high waves ahead. The Tigers deserve to go to the World Series. 84 is too long ago. I'll mention it just once. I was at Game 5, 1984, in the bleachers. I saw Kirk Gibson launch one into the upper deck, much to the dismay of Goose Gossage. AZ Bluesman, what happened to the vanishing point plate? Did I move it? I moved some plates the other day. I have way too many license plates. Caution, highways ahead. My uncle would have loved to have been at that game. It was one of those things where everything worked out. Back then, you had to actually mail in money with a thing or a check, and it was a lottery, and they would just draw envelopes and get tickets out until they ran out of tickets. And I got tickets for what would be Game 5 if there was one. So the Tigers had to lose one game for me to have a game to go to. And I could have scalped the tickets and made a fortune, but I didn't. I brought 3 of my friends. I didn't even charge them. I'm like, let's go to the game, guys. And we were at the game in the bleachers. So we're way back there. But, man, that's where the party was. Had a great time. And then once the game was over, got back to our car as fast as possible and got the heck out of there because people were celebrating / rioting in the streets. Mexican specs, they charge you for the tickets from maybe. Yeah, so if there was no Game 5, they'd refund your money. So the trick was you didn't scalp them or buy scalp tickets. If you bought the scalp tickets, you could only get the face value back for them. But I think we knew. In fact, I remember I remember watching the game they lost and actually feeling bad because deep down I'm like, yes, I needed them to lose one game. I had friends of mine making fun of me. What did they sweep? I'm like, oh, well, they sweep then, I guess. Jim Reese in Cincinnati says, hi. Are you Jim Reese or is James Reese different than Jim Reese? Caution, high waves ahead says, yeah, those crazy celebrations. I actually knew somebody who was in the suburbs of Detroit watching the game when it ended, got in his car and drove down there and was doing donuts like right outside the stadium. And I'm like, wait, you went in while I was trying to get out? Chuck Puck says you never said why Indiana chose to dismiss a homicide charge instead of cases with lesser charges. They said they were too busy to handle it. And it was coming up. So they dismissed that case to make room for other cases that were coming up. And that presumably meant that other cases coming up were just as important. But they were prepared for those cases and not this case. Blah, blah, blah. Everybody in town running around with the brooms. Hilarious. Yeah, the old sweep thing. There was a group of guys in Michigan, in Detroit, who were the attorney drill team. And they dressed in suits and they carried briefcases and they'd march in parades and do stuff synchronized, but with their briefcases instead of like a baton or a rifle or anything like that. And there was an occasion where the Red Wings swept somebody, I forget if it was a Stanley Cup or whatever, and they had a parade. And instead of their briefcases, they were carrying brooms and they'd sweep in unison. Oh, boy. James, call me Jim. I don't care. There you go. Alethea, why are so many people writing in caps lock? They're trying to get my attention, I guess. They're yelling. Why are you yelling? Daniel Kester's only been to one baseball game ever. You're referring to Major League Baseball, I assume. A's versus Yankees. I'll admit, I've only been to 2 or 3 games at Comerica Park. Probably 5 games at Tiger Stadium. I didn't go see a lot of baseball games when I was younger, and I don't find it as interesting now as I did when I was a little kid. So, airplane mechanics. This is Steve. What brand RV would you recommend? See, that's a loaded question. You assume I'd recommend a brand. No, actually, I recommend you buy a used one. But yeah, a Prevost is going to have a very, very high quality manufacturer compared to a Winnebago. So the more you spend, the more you're going to get. But don't buy new. Buy used. Find somebody else who's already ticked off. Uh, The Prodigal Stranger says, my mother stopped in at my job. Did I miss anything? I only asked because Steve looked pretty animated for a while. Whoa, it's past 2:00. Hang on. I'm just drinking water today. That's just water. Frozen Canary, greetings from Asbury Park. Yes, this is the what's it, ASM, ASMR, whatever it is. We're going to listen to sounds now for a little while I pour my water. John Zablak, I've been to several Little League games. I played Little League every single year I could, and I had a lot of fun. And I agree with MHOA that baseball has been ruined. I mean, I've watched some baseball, but I mean, some of the statistics they put on the screen, and pitch counters and stuff. I mean, I watched the Little League World Series. They got a pitch counter up. Now I understand that the Little League pitcher can only throw so many pitches. But to me, it's kind of like, can't they just play baseball? Oh, Jason Brindamar, so let's do the Lehto Coyote versus Acme at Tiger Stadium. We could do it on the big screen, right? Lewis Browning, is there a lot of wrong information? Okay, I'm going to pass a new rule. People who mention Wikipedia and my name, I will actually delete your comments because I'm sick of it. I did not put that up. Someone else put that up. It has incorrect information. I do not endorse it, and I don't want to call attention to it either. So, the Prodigal Stranger, the pitch clock has got to go. I'm not too crazy about the pitch clock. That's another thing. It's just pitch clock, pitch count. Oh boy. Bob blah blah. I'd love to go to a Savannah Bananas game. Oh, I love them, and they're like the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball. They've figured out a way to make baseball fun to watch. Some of it's a little goofy, but man, they have a lot of fun. James Reese, any thoughts on bounty hunters? We don't have them in Michigan, so no, not really. And I've never watched the show with Dog. Dana, 2021. I used to love playing baseball, but watching it is dull, especially no hitters. Yeah, the worst thing to have happen is you go to a baseball game and it's a pitching duel. Pitching duel. 17 innings and it ended 1-0. MHO8, they get the pitch count to speed up the game, but now the batter can appeal a strike. What should they do? I think they should actually use a device to call strikes. They got to have the technology now, and just let the technology call balls and strikes. Why bother having Angel Hernandez on the field? I think he retired, didn't he? But the point is that they had to put in instant replay in football. They had to. There are too many bad calls, and some instant replay in baseball. But appealing balls and strikes. So Mark H, would you consider buying a used Hertz rental car? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't consider buying a used rental car at all. Chris Gooley says you could use AI to call balls and strikes. Well, I mean, can't they just do it with like lasers or something or radar or there's got to be something. Harry Seldon says the appeal is not being used yet on the balls and strikes. Uranovium, have you ever been to Sweden? No, I've never been to Sweden or Finland. I'd like to go to Finland. Have not been there yet. I'd like to go to Sweden. Haven't been there yet either. Ember Miss 69, the strangest law case that law school goes over. Trying to remember the strange ones. Oh, shoot. I can't think. I know there are some. I can't think of there's the very, very famous tort case. I'm drawing a mental blank on it now. Um, shoot. I can't think of I do remember the one, it's an oddball case involving Johnny Unitas, the football player, and he was gifted a car after either the Super Bowl or whatever the predecessor to the Super Bowl was. And it was given to him on New Year's Eve, where they handed him the keys and said, "Congratulations, you've got this car." And they delivered it to him on like January 2nd. And he forgot to declare it on his taxes. And the IRS came after him and they fought over whether he got the car as income when they handed him the keys or delivered the car to him. Because it was when they handed him the keys, the statute of limitations was blown. But it was when he actually got delivery of the car, then they could get him because it was not. And I seem to recall they said when they handed him the keys, and congratulations, it's yours. I think that was it. But it's been a long time, literally a long time. Vinny Sluga, hello, Steve. Hello. James Reese's bounty hunting is legal in Michigan, is not regulated. Um, I'm curious about it because of the fact that every time I hear people talking about it, they go, well, they don't have that in Michigan. Hmm. Well, it is not regulated, but I've never heard of anybody bounty hunting in Michigan. So I suspect there's something else going on that I haven't got the time to look at right now. Georgianne Thornton's checking from San Antonio. Dana 2021, did the McDonald's hot coffee case ever become a sample case? It's misunderstood. I agree with that. I actually did a video about it years and years and years ago, and people don't want to hear the facts. They'd rather argue about things that they think are crazy. So I don't even bother doing that kind of stuff anymore. Dan DeClerc, so they don't have bounty hunting. Is bail jumping more common in Michigan? James Thompson mentions the Twinkie defense. And again, another misunderstood thing. Yeah, KC6NFV points to the dog, the bounty hunter, got in trouble in Mexico. So Mark Miller says you froze there for a second. I'm pretty sure I did because I saw something happening here too. So sorry about that. Mrs. Teresa 1999, have a great week, Steve, and everyone else also. TK, Steve, is your law firm part of the 500 law firms writing as friends of the court against the Trump administration? Not that I'm aware of, no. Oh, Brianna CC, do you eat whole almonds as a snack? I have, but not in a while. It's often they pop up as like a party snack or something like that. Harry Seldon, how about the Chewbacca defense? I'm not sure what the Chewbacca defense is. I have no idea. Sorry. I don't watch South Park. So the prodigal stranger recommends diamond, salt, and vinegar when it comes to almonds. Chris Gooley, if the glove don't fit, you must have quit. I know it doesn't. I like to point out that up until that trial, Chris Darden was undefeated. Oh, unbelievable. TK, Legal Eagle just put up a video about it and joining it. Oh, and joining it, like he filed something. Bob blah blah wasn't the OJ trial the first trial that used DNA evidence. No, it was one of the first where the DNA evidence became such a focal point in such a widely publicized trial. KC6NFE. How many times have you seen the Canadian Mounties in Michigan? 0. I've never seen a Canadian Mountie in Michigan. I'm not sure I've seen them in Canada. Oh, boy. 858 Bill says, I think you've done enough live shows to qualify for a Las Vegas residency. I think, live show. Oh, I'm not sure how many live shows I've done. I know I've got several thousand videos up, but yeah. I'm not sure anybody would show up. That's the whole point. Dana 2021 says the Netflix special shows how bad that case was run. You mean the O.J. Simpson case? There was. We haven't got the time. There was so much that happened that could have been done differently by everybody, including the judge. The judge let that case go so wildly out of control, where it's like, oh, we're going to put someone on the stand for 6 days, and they can be cross-examined for 12 days. And it's like, gee, what's the defense theory here? maybe some jurors will die of old age. Sub GR77 seen a Windsor, Ontario police car in Michigan. I've seen them in Windsor. KC6 NFE accept Canadian money for payment. How often does somebody mention something that I can very quickly go, hey, check it out? Canadian money. I've actually got some Canada 5 bill 5s because I love the belted kingfisher. And I mentioned that years ago, probably during a live stream. And I had 2 people send them to me. So I've got these really cool $5 bills from Canada that got the belted kingfisher on the back. So got to dig that. But I've never had anybody pay me in Canadian currency because my money always comes from the defendants that I'm suing, who are all American manufacturers for the most part, and occasionally foreign manufacturers doing business here in America. Damned registration says that's an old bill. It says Ottawa, 1986. So yeah, a couple of years old, but I like that. So. And Alethea likes the kingfisher. Kingfishers are really cool birds. I like birds. I've got sandhill cranes. I've got hawks. I've seen eagles over my property. I've also got great blue herons that fly over my property. I don't have any belted kingfishers because I don't have a river nearby. But I used to mountain bike in a park that had a river flowing through it, and you'd hear them. They make this weird chattering noise, and they'd fly along the surface like it's like watching a little fighter plane come along the surface of the water, and then when they'd see something, they hit it, and it was so much fun to watch. And occasionally, they'd sit up in a branch and they're watching, and they dive down and go fishing. Very, very cool. James Thompson says UK money is plastic now. Yeah, I've seen some of that plastic money, although you can get around nowadays using nothing but the regular plastic you got in your wallet already. So. Prince Albert says, I've heard you talk about the big three. That's a throwback because big three is what, see, I grew up in Detroit and the auto industry in Detroit is the thing. I mean, headlines on most nights of the news would be about something to do with the auto industry. It's kind of like Hollywood is in California. If you're in Los Angeles, you hear about movies and movie stars and studios and all this stuff. And so in Detroit, it was always the car companies, and it was always the big three, Ford, GM, and Chrysler. Not in that order, but that's them. Ford, GM, and Chrysler. And over the years, they've changed owners, and they weren't even all in Detroit. Auburn Hills, Chrysler moved up to Auburn Hills, Ford moved out to Dearborn, but the big three automakers were always around. And over time, of course, there are other automakers, but the big three is just old school talk for the auto industry, the American companies that were in southeastern Michigan. And I understand that you can say, but Steve, Honda builds cars in America. I know. Theodore Becker says, I'll take a Steve Lehto online class. How much can I charge? Cyberdoc is checking in from the mighty James River in Richmond, Virginia, eating a shrimp cocktail. And if you're outside doing that, I salute you. If you're inside, I also salute you. Jason Brindmeier's only seen a bluebird twice. Are you talking about the vehicle chassis, or are you talking about the actual birds? Because I've seen bluebirds around too. A weird bird is the Australian kiwi. Daniel, if you're referring to the New Zealand kiwi, or the kiwis in both places? But yeah, they it's an effort for them to lay an egg. They're huge. Blah blah blah. Who is Big Pizza? That's another thing that makes no sense is that for some odd reason, Detroit also became like the pizza capital of the U.S. for a little while because Domino's and Little Caesars were both based in southeastern Michigan. And then, of course, a bunch of the other ones are also. And I know that there's others that have popped up since then. But I remember being in law school and explaining to somebody that, yeah, both Domino's and Little Caesars from Detroit. And they're like, what? I mean, Detroit area. So TK ever to sue Toyota? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We've sued them all. Thumper says a Canadian quarter has a caribou on it. I remember those. And didn't the nickels have beavers on them for a while? Yeah. Thumper. Canadian nickel has the beaver. There you go. Jason Brindmeyer says, I'd like to see an American kestrel. That's a bird of prey, correct? I don't think I've seen one. I've seen hawks and I've seen eagles. Fred Blowers, have you had lemon law cases against all of the car manufacturers? I don't think I've ever had one, like, say, against Rolls Royce or involving a Rolls Royce. And I'm not sure. I'd have to think about like Lamborghini and a couple others, but you'd be surprised. Yeah, ZenX is the Canadian loonie, is the $1 coin. It's got a loon on it. And then you got a $2 coin. It has a coin inside of it, and they jokingly call it a toonie. Dana, 2021, did your days in radio as a DJ lead you to YouTube? Sort of. I started doing a podcast at one point in time. And then the transition over to video took longer than it should have, but I got there eventually. So there you go. Dan DeClerc says Rolls Royce is really BMW. I'm not talking about the different parents. I'm talking about the cars themselves, because I've sued BMW. Okay. But I'm talking about, like, for instance, ever had a case involving a Cadillac? Yes. Well, Cadillac's General Motors. I've had so many Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile. I'm talking about companies that aren't even around anymore. I've had cases against them back in the day. But I don't think I've ever had somebody call me because they had a bad Rolls Royce. And, really hyper exotic cars, no. So, Bob Lablas, the Vietnam War ended 50 years ago today. Did it really? Wow, I didn't know that. There you go. Cyberdoc, was there ever a class action against a motorcycle manufacturer for a genuine lemon? I'm not sure what you're getting at with that because, among other things, in most states, the lemon law does not cover motorcycles. But I have represented people who bought defective motorcycles that weren't covered by their or that weren't being worked, repaired under warranty. And I mean, I had a client who had a Ducati, whatever the biggest Ducati is you could buy that year. The guy buys this monster Ducati, and the thing has an oil leak they can't fix. That's a problem, and they bought it back. So Theodore Becker says, I think he said Viper and Cobra. I have two cars. I've two cool cars. I've got a Viper and a Cobra. My other cars are cool too, but it's not the same way. So Sig226 says the fall of Saigon was 4/30/75. So a couple days later. Long Black Train. Today is my birthday. Congratulations. Happy birthday. Oh, Cyberdoc. Where in the world is Johnny Knoxville? He was here earlier, probably watching some racing. Canadian Robot Lady did check in with me, and she said she probably couldn't be here today because she was feeling a little under the weather. And Bob Blah Blah says, why do we say we're feeling under the weather? How's that make you sick? Don't know. A lot of sayings actually we don't have obvious explanations for them. L, just the letter L. Would you ever consider entertainment type content in the future, like shorts or reactions to media or TV shows? I'm not sure. I've done a few videos where I've mentioned like that I like a movie or don't like a movie, and it just pisses people off. I had so many people get mad at me when I mentioned I didn't like a recent movie, and I'm like, sorry, I can't like them all. So James Thompson says, fun fact, Detroit is north of Canada. Yeah, that's why we always joke about being born and raised in South Detroit, as in the Journey song, which would be you're born in Canada, I guess. Windsor. Oh, boy. Dana, this is the first of your lives I've caught, and it's great. So glad I caught it. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Paul Harris is doing Uber and Lyft in Boston. Can you do both? Do you have to swap something out, like sign-wise, or? Podred, does the house burn up or burn down? That's interesting. And there are a lot of phrases like that where you go, wait a second, what? Oh, boy. KC6NFV says Rolls-Royce warranty for life. I think you blow the motor, they'll install a new engine. I basically think their service is so good that if there actually was a lemon, they would just say, we're so sorry. Come get your new car. It'll never happen again. Damned registrations reaction content can be a bit iffy copyright-wise. Oh, yeah, you can get struck for copyright if you were to actually play what you're reacting to, and that's another problem. I'd love to do, like, countdown shows of my favorite songs, but I couldn't play them. Devin bounces journeys from San Francisco. So, yeah, I remember. I think I've read an interview. I think did Steve Perry write the lyrics to that song? I believe he did. But I read an interview with whichever person wrote the lyrics, and they said we were just looking for words that sounded good in a 2-syllable town in Detroit, and Detroit's got a big rock and roll market. So, Euronovium says, is the Johnny Cash song One Piece at a Time, which I mentioned in a video about a week or two ago, based on a true story? Yeah, no, I don't think so. Many of Johnny Cash's songs are intended to be humorous. Oh. Paul Harris says, I have both labels on my car. As an independent contractor, I can choose who I work for at the moment and chase the money. Good for you. Very good. Lexico, what's with raising something to the ground? Well, you spelled it wrong, but yeah, R-A-Z-E, to raise something means to knock it down. That's the great example of a homonym where two words sound alike but have completely different meanings. Low faces with lemon law buybacks, do they pay book value or what you paid for? They unwind the deal and you get back the money you put into it, less a mileage offset. I had somebody recently send me a video where some guy says, hey, if you're upside down with your car, trade it in for a car that's likely to become a lemon, and then when they buy that back, you'll get the negative equity. No, that's not how that works. Don't make money. So long black train says 49 years young, just like you, Steve. I'll take it. Sig 226 is like there, and there. There's also two, and two, and there's also turban and turban. Don't get me going. Blah, blah, blah. Funny word, poppycock, considering there's no mommycock. There's all kinds of words like that just, thingamajig. I mean, who knows? For the two, 42. Jason Brimar felling a tree. Well, the tree does fall eventually, doesn't it? Tough, though, taught, thought, through, thorough, throughout. Brian Ellis points out there's a bunch of oddities in there. Yeah, that's because English, the English language, is basically a dumping ground for other languages. And so we've adopted so many words from other languages that we have words that sound alike that came from totally different places. And you go, how did that word become? It didn't come through Latin. It came from Icelandic or something. So that Jeff. So motorcycles are not covered by the lemon law. Yeah, neither in many states, neither are boats, neither are RVs, neither are all kinds of stuff. They at the time considered it to be a problem larger in the automotive industry because the thinking was they sell so many cars, and the number of motorcycles sold to cars is a lot smaller. But I mean, the fact that it didn't cover RVs in many states, people, they buy a $500,000 RV and it's not covered by the lemon law. And they're like, wait, what? What if the engine doesn't work? Well, I hope it's got a warranty. That Jeff says English isn't a dumping ground. It's a thug that mugs other languages and rolls them for loose grammar. No, but the point is that we're not stealing words because they can keep them. We're just borrowing them. But a lot of immigrants come to America and bring their language with them. And you will often hear about weird constructions that occur because someone learned to speak in another language and it changes their grammar. And I can give you an example that in Finnish, you wouldn't say I'm going to the store. You'd say I'm going store. But you'd say I'm going in Finnish and store in Finnish. I'm going store. And so my dad was telling me that he had some kids in his class. He taught high school for a little while. And they'd say things like, I'm going after school, I'm going movie. Want to go movie? Want to go movies? And I want to go to the movies. But my dad spoke Finnish and English. He understood what they're saying. But of course, they'd get picked on by the English speaking people going, you mean you're going to the store? Like, yeah, I'm going store. Because they're literally just translating word for word. So MHOA is buying an RV is a penalty for not watching Lehto's Law. Oh boy. Yeah, Dana 2021 says we don't have to worry about English much longer. Soon the younger generation will have us back to imagery only, emojis. Yeah, pictographs. Don't forget that if you read the book Fast Food Nation, in there the guy talks about how one of the ways that they make money is by making the jobs so simple that they can hire anyone and train them to do it. And somebody actually said, ideally, you want the job to be describable in pictographs. So if you're slopping together whatever they call food at Taco Bell, and you have a trowel in one hand and a shell on the other hand, it shouldn't be up here in words how to make it. It should just say, you know, 1 scoop plus this equals this. And they actually talk about that. Like make it where pictographs will be all you need. Do you, can you read? It doesn't matter. We'll hire you, you know. So SD backouts is England going to hospital. Yes, that's on. Yeah. That's when you often hear. Steve says, "Hey, I'm eating Taco Bell." I actually used to say this joke, and then one day the Onion did it, and I swear to God, I said it first. Taco Bell, according to the Onion, held a press conference. They just came clean and just said, "Look, everything we sell is the same. We just package it a little differently and come up with new names every 6 months." Blah blah blah. Isn't that what hieroglyphics are? I believe so. Pictographs, hieroglyphics, cuneiform. Standard deviation reminds us that all languages evolve. Chaucer and Shakespeare would not have understood each other. And so, for those of you who are looking for Steve's movie recommendations, which I know none of you are, I love the movie Shakespeare in Love. I absolutely love that movie. And I'm not even a big Shakespeare fan. And it's not an actual movie about Shakespeare, but somebody came up with a screenplay. And what they do in that movie, if you watch it and pay attention, is so clever and so ingenious and it's so well done. But if you haven't seen it, go watch it. But if you're upset after you watch it because you watched it on my recommendation, I'm sorry. But if you think that you and I might have similar sensibilities and you've not seen that movie, Shakespeare in Love. Just telling you. Casual chess history, whose name intrigues me for some odd reason. I ate Taco Bell daily in 2019 and lost 30 pounds in 2 months. Really? Um, I'm a big fan of chess. I do play some chess. I'm not rated. But I love watching some chess channels, including Agadmator, who I think is from Croatia, Antonio. Really, really fascinating stuff. And I love his analysis of classic chess matches. There's a couple other people I like to watch also. Anna Kramling is very entertaining to watch also. If you like chess, I would I'd recommend her. Andy, New York 29. She's been plucked and not by you. It takes a woman to know these things. Dana 2021 says, I can't believe the movie didn't get more positive reviews. What won like 12 Oscars or something, didn't it? But I think a lot of people thought it was a little too flippant, and then they're like, "Oh, it's not true. It's not." And you got to suspend your disbelief. Number one, because it's a movie, but number two, because they're not saying this is what happened. They're just imagining that this in another universe could have been possible. I guess it's like Amadeus. Amadeus. I love that movie. I know it's not accurate. I don't care. It doesn't need to be accurate. What the guy did with the music and the characters and the story is so well done that it doesn't matter that he's using a real person, but made up the story. Casual Chess History says my channel is an experiment in tinkering with AI. I personally wouldn't recommend it. I'm an avid player though, 2200-ish. If you have any interest in chess history, read the most recent biography of Bobby Fischer that came out a couple of years ago called Endgame, I believe it is. And it's the same guy who wrote a book many, many years ago called Profile of a Prodigy. And then after Bobby Fischer came back in the spotlight before he passed away, this guy felt the need to update the story. So he rewrote the entire book. And it's fascinating, utterly fascinating. And Bobby Fischer is one of the strangest people in American history because when he was at his peak, when he was on his game, so to speak, He was doing stuff that people didn't think was possible, and he was doing stuff that in many respects would never be repeated again. Um, and then he had such a horrific flame out and meltdown at the end of his life that it's like, oh, how amazingly horrible that if he'd simply disappeared and retired in 1978, he would have gone down in history as this bright flaming genius, and instead went out with such a horrible ending. It's like, oh God. So what are you gonna do? Boomer Amadeus, like in the song, yes, Rock Me Amadeus, Falco. Falco 3. It's a great album. I highly recommend it. But of course, Rock Me Amadeus, I believe, was inspired by the movie. And Falco saw the movie and felt the need to write that song. Falco is no longer with us, but if you go onto YouTube and type in Falco, Rock Me Amadeus live, find footage of him in concert doing that song. You can find footage of him, I believe, someplace in Austria, doing that song in front of a hometown audience, and the place is going nuts. And by the way, Rock Me Amadeus is a great song. The lyrics are a little silly, but who cares? Who cares? It's a great song, but thank you for calling that out. Oh boy. Brian Ellis's Queen's Gambit on Netflix is good. I agree with that. I saw that and I agree with that. And it's interesting because it's a fictional story about a young chess prodigy. And it has some parallels to some people in real life, but they decided let's just fictionalize it. In other words, it's not based on there is no female chess prodigy it's based upon. And so if you're watching it, you can go, I can see where they got this. But like for instance, in the games or in the series climactic episode, they actually used a real game. And I believe Gary Kasparov, I think it was Kasparov who helped them. And they said, we want to make sure that there is actually, if there's people watching this game, and so they actually used a real obscure but real game, so that people watching it, oh my God, that was good. So wait, Daniel Kester didn't care for the extended version of what? Rock Me Amadeus? Yeah, no. Extended versions often are afterthoughts. Somebody goes, hey, let's cash in on this. So Theodore Becker's Bobby Fischer and Paul Morphy. Well, there are a bunch of people out there tall. You hear Agamemnon talk about tall, you think he's talking about, a deity. And you go back and you watch some of those games and you realize you are. But there is a video on Agadmator's channel for all of you chess players. And I know there's a couple out there. For all the chess players in my audience, I'm going to tell you right now, when you're done with this video, go to Agadmator's chess channels, Agadmator, Agadmator. Go to his chess channel, look up a game, a video he's got entitled A Queen for a King. A Queen for a King. And it's a game that Bobby Fischer played against a South American grandmaster. I forgot the guy's name. And about 20 moves in, the host of the thing, Agadmator, says, and on Bobby Fischer's next move, his opponent resigns. Stop the video and see if you can spot the move. And you can stop the video and watch it for a day. You probably won't spot it because it is the most insane sacrifice you ever saw in your entire life. And it leads to a forced check, a forced mate in 8 or 7. And the thing is that when he made the move that set that up, his opponent looked at it and goes, oh, I'm done, and resigned. And I guarantee you there were people at the match watching go, why did he resign? Why did he resign? And it would take a grandmaster to explain it to you. Oh, you do this, boom, 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 boom. Then you do this, Forced mate in 8. And it reminds me of another video I saw on his channel where I believe it may have been two of the programs playing against each other, like Stockfish versus Leela or something. And he goes, I'm going to show you a game where it ends in a stalemate. And normally we don't care because those aren't that exciting. He goes, but it has the most insane ending. The most insane ending. Because one of the programs realizes it can't win, but it realizes it has a forced stalemate in 8. And just starts sacrificing pieces, and it's sacrificing pieces that you have to take because it's, and all of a sudden, boom, stalemate. Yeah, I apologize. I think something's locked up on me again. I don't know if it's me or if it's Memorex or if it's YouTube or if it's AI or what. So there you go. You're a Novium. Do you like Mountain Dew? I drink it from time to time, but I know people who drink it like it's the nectar of the gods. So Mexican Spec, you are synced again. Am I synced or am I unsynced or I'm resynced? Oh boy. Robert, what are your thoughts on an LLM in taxation? LLM is like a legal master's degree. I've known a few people who got them, and if you're that interested in tax, you're going to go work either at a big tax firm if they exist, or in a corporation's tax department. Maybe some big companies like General Electric or Westinghouse have got more tax lawyers on staff than anything else. So long black cream. My wife drinks Diet Mountain Dew like it's a lifestyle. Colonel Korg won first time here. Love your regular videos. Thank you. I appreciate that. Devin Bounce, I was listening to the score for Titanic. It's sinking now. I thought you were going to suggest that if you ran the score to Titanic along with my live stream, it would appear they're synced up the way Pink Floyd and The Wizard of Oz did, Jason Brindamar, Mountain Dew is my morning coffee. Diet Coke is mine. And I people are like, look, you got to drink something in the morning, right? Long black train, load up on the caffeine, but not the sugar, I guess. Don't understand it. That's my whole thing. I love Coca-Cola, but I can't handle the sugar. Can't handle the sugar. Sub GR77's got to go. Have a good day, night, afternoon, yada, 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 so on and so forth. Dan Boyd, orange juice. Kevin Smith might have a typo there. I think he may have meant no tax on tips. But then again, you could be talking about a dance club, right? Bob, blah, blah. Good night, Ralph. Good night, Sam. Dan Boyd, I refuse to drink soda pop. Tamer Lapoule, you're reading all the questions? Most of them. Sometimes they go past a little too fast. MHOH says I have coffee as my morning Diet Coke. And Jason Brennamar says the worst part of 3 p.m. Sunday is the end of Lehto's Live. So that is going to wrap it up for me today. So I can get out of here before it does do another jump or desync on me or whatever it is. So I will say goodbye now. Please watch my regular channel during the week. If you're not a fan of or signed up for my second channel, start following it because I do have a fairly large announcement to make on Friday, but I'm not going to put it on my main channel because it's not a main channel kind of thing. It'll make more sense on my backup channel, Steve Lehto's other channel, second channel, something like that. And until then, have a great week. Bye-bye.